When we look at 4.2, we're talking about the revolution begins. So we're talking about the start of the American Revolution. Now, remember, the first fighting took place on April 19th of 1775. So Lexington and Concord has started. The first battle has started, and this is going to be the parts that are just after this. Now, as we look into and we're going through 4.2, remember that you can use this to help you set up your notes. You can also use this not only for your notes for the quiz, but you can also use it at the test at the end of chapter 4. So remember, the information that's on here will be directly related to the quiz and the test that you guys are going to be doing. So 4.2 is going to start off talking about the First Continental Congress, and I'll move my face around so we can see everything in just a moment. But the First Continental Congress is going to happen after the closing of Boston Harbor. When we have the Boston Tea Party, remember that's going to lead to the Intolerable Acts. And when they pass the Intolerable Acts, what that's doing is it's going to close, one of the parts is it's closing Boston Harbor. So the business people of Boston are not able to receive shipments or to send any shipments out, which means that they're losing a lot of money. And so we're going to have people come together. And this is in October of 74. The date here is really, it's just for reference. You're not going to be tested or quizzed on the dates. That's not something that's necessarily important. Dates you can always look up. I want you to understand the concepts behind. And so the other part here is you're seeing stuff in blue. If it's in blue, that's going to be more the Patriot side or the colonist side. If it's in red, that'll be more the British side. So the First Continental Congress is this gathering of leaders, of colonial leaders, because we were upset with what Britain was doing to us, right? Or what Britain was doing to the colonists. Now, our goals, more to state our concerns to the king. Hey, this is something that we don't like what's going on. We're hoping that we can fix this. We are, the colonists are still going to be British. They're still going to identify as British, and they still want to be a part of Britain. But there are some impacts or issues that they want the king to look at. And so we send the Declaration of Rights. Now, the way the analogy that I did this is these are a list of really 10 complaints that we have to the king, and one of them is that concept of life, liberty, and property. Now, we're upset that the British soldiers killed people at the Boston Massacre, the first being a former slave, Crispus Attucks. We're upset that the British are throwing suspected smugglers into jail, and those people are guilty until proven innocent. The colonists are upset about being taxed without their consent. And so when we have this argument of life, liberty, and property, it's going to be the forebearer to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what we also need to understand is that the people who are writing this, the people who are coming up with the Declaration of Rights and life, liberty, and property, are the same people who are owning slaves as well. We can't ignore that hypocrisy, but we need to point it out. We need to understand that it's there, so that way we can make informed decisions and know the complexity of what's happening at this time. So we send the Declaration of Rights. This would be basically you guys writing a list of 10 complaints to your mom or your dad and saying, hey, you know what? I really appreciate you guys fixing this. You can imagine how well that would go. It's probably not going to go well in your house. I know in my house as a kid, I know my dad would have reminded me who was in charge. I know that if my kids did that to me, one, I'd be impressed that they sat down and wrote a list of 10 because one of them's 4. So, hey, good job. But the reality is we'd have a discussion on who the boss is anyways. And so the king is also going to kind of go through that same concept of, no, you don't get to tell me what to do. I'm the king. And so there are people when they're trying to make this decision on who basically realize we're going to go to war anyways. Patrick Henry is from Virginia. He's going to encourage the colonists to fight for independence very early. His famous line, "Give me liberty or give me death." He can see what's coming. He can see that we're headed towards war anyways, between the colonists and the British. And so he's going to encourage people to fight. These people who side with Patrick Henry we're going to call, or the colonists are going to call patriots. Patriots are colonists who chose to fight for independence, right? They want to be free from Great Britain. They believe that they don't need to be ruled by the king anymore. They want to set up their own government. And so the colonists will call them patriots on who decide to fight with to side with Patrick Henry and actually get into the fighting. Now we decide that we're going to send this information to the king. We're going to send the Declaration of Rights. We're going to send this concept of, or the colonists are going to send the concept of, hey, the colonists are still British. These are the 10 things we want. And they decide that they're going to come back in 1775. So the next year, depending on what the king says. If the king says, hey, you know what, these are logical, the crown can work on these things, then the Second Continental Congress wouldn't have to happen. But if the king responds in a negative way, then these delegates are going to have to come back and talk about what's going to happen. Now, remember the time that it takes to go from the colonies to Britain and then back from Britain to the colonies is going to be a while. And during this time, we're going to see the shot heard around the world. And I mentioned this on that front page, but just shot heard around the world, could not really be heard everywhere in the world. It's just a saying about how important these first shots are, because it's going really to change the world and how everything happens from that. And so General Thomas Gage, who is the governor of Massachusetts at the time, is going to hear that the colonists have weaponry, guns, ammunition, bullets, gunpowder, cannons here at Concord. So you can see this is the weapons storehouse rumored to be in Concord. This is actually what it looks like today. And so the king wants to send British soldiers who are called the Redcoats. And the reason why they're called the Redcoats is because of the color of their uniforms. They wear red coats. We'll talk about the strategy of that later on, but they're called Redcoats because of the color of their coats. Thomas Gage wants to send the Redcoats to Concord to grab all the weapons rumored to be here in the storehouse. Hey, buddy, I'm doing this.
Are you doing your meeting?
Yep, I'm doing my work. I'm doing my lecture. And so, go upstairs.
It's cool.
Okay, go upstairs. So you have Thomas Gage thinking that the plan is secret, not understanding that we actually have spies everywhere. And in these spies are included as women. Women are going to be very valuable to every part of our society from, throughout all of history. They're just ignored. And this is what happens at this time as well, where women are able to hear the Redcoats' plans on how they're going to sneak in and at night go and capture the guns. Well, we learn of the plan. And so you have 4 men, Revere, Dawes, Prescott, and Newman, are going to work together on what's called the Midnight Ride. So Robert Newman, who is not pictured here, is going to go to the top of the Old North Church. The Old North Church is the tallest building in the area. You can see even here in today's modern picture that it's taller than the surrounding buildings. And he's going to warn Revere and Dawes how the Redcoats are on their way to Concord. And so he gets to the top, and in this top steeple part, he's going to put 2 lanterns. That's why you're seeing the 2 lanterns here, because the British are going to march on Concord by sea. So he puts the 2 lanterns there, and Revere and Dawes are going to start the process of the Midnight Ride, where they go out and warn the Minutemen Minutemen are these farmers, these colonists who are ready to fight at a minute's notice. There's gonna that the redcoats are marching on Concord. That the redcoats are on their way to seize the guns, the weapons, and everything else. And so, as Revere and Dawes are riding, they get other riders out as well, like Samuel Prescott. Well, Revere and Dawes never make it to Concord. The only one that actually makes it to Concord is Prescott. The reason why we're able to keep the guns, the ammunition, the gunpowder, and everything else safe, the only reason why is because Prescott actually made it. He's the one that warns of the advance on towards Concord. He gets there. Revere gets captured by a British patrol. Dawes falls off his horse and hurts his ankle and has to go back to Britain. And it's Prescott who actually makes it all the way there. So Prescott makes it to Concord, and we're able to hide the guns. Well, at the Lexington Green, we have 70 Minutemen, and I showed you guys this in while we were reading and stuff. But there are 70 Minutemen who end up stopping the British soldiers in the Lexington Green, trying to stop their approach. In this concept, we're told to not fire unless fired upon, because we don't want to start the fight. We're a bunch of farmers, and the British are told not to fire. We don't know what happened. Someone's gun goes off, and the first shots of the Revolutionary War start. This is the shot heard around the world. We do not know who fired that first shot. We don't know if it's just one of us being scared and accidentally shooting the gun. We don't know if it's a British officer who ignored direct orders and fired the weapon himself. But the shot happened. And in just a couple minutes, we have 18 wounded and dead. We've only wounded one of theirs. We do not do well at Lexington. We scatter very quickly, and it should make sense. We're farmers. Sure, we can shoot, animals to eat, but just because you can shoot an animal to eat doesn't mean you're good in warfare. And so we scatter, and the British continue their march to the weapons storehouse. Now, by the time they get to the weapons storehouse, we, or the colonists, have moved all of the guns, all of the weapons, all of the gunpowder, and everything else. And so the British start to be upset and start to burn parts of houses, barns, and they burn enough to where a lot of people think they're burning the entire city, at least from the view, because the smoke is so bad. So more Minutemen show up, and on the 17-mile march back to Boston, the Redcoats are going to face fire the entire way, shots the entire way. On their way home, the Minutemen are going to hide behind trees and bushes along the road and shoot into the British as they march home. It's such an embarrassing route home, and so many men are wounded. Thomas Gage is going to be relieved of command because he didn't get the weapons, and his men suffered so many casualties on the way home. It's an embarrassment because it's by a bunch of farmers. And so General Gage is going to be replaced. As he is replaced, he's going to be replaced with William Howe, and we'll get to Howe in just a minute. But we also have to decide, all right, now real fighting has occurred. Bloodshed's already been spilled, right? That former slave, Crispus Attucks, was killed at the Boston Massacre. Bloodshed has happened on our side. We have had people killed, but this is the first battle. And so we have to decide. Now we're in May of 75, right? So April of 75 was shot heard around the world. This is the next month. And we have to decide, hey, what are we doing here as a continent, right? As the colonies, what is the decision that's going to be made? And so it's still, is it peaceful or is it violent? And the colonists and the Continental Congress decide to compromise. They're going to prepare for war on this side, but send peace with this. So the Continental Congress will make what's called the Continental Army. Now, remember, they're calling it the Continental because we're on the continent and England is an island. They make the Continental Army, which is made up of the Massachusetts militia. So all those farmers that came out for Lexington and Concord, it's going to include them, but it also include all other soldiers or all other soldiers from the colonies that showed up that wanted to support the colonists' cause. And so you created the Continental Army. And to put in charge of the Continental Army is George Washington. George Washington's from Virginia. He's well respected. And he becomes in charge, the leader of the Continental Army. On a completely side note, I think it's awesome that this guy, even though it was a painting, was able to photobomb Washington and get into this famous painting. Nice job of this guy. So Washington is going to be the commander of the army in case we're going to war. But we also, the colonists also send the Olive Branch Petition. The Olive Branch Petition is the final attempt to restore harmony. We're trying one last time for peace. We tell we're basically saying to the king, look, the colonists are trying to have peace. We want this to, the colonists want this to be successful. The colonists want to stay British. And so here is a peace and one more peace offer. The king angrily rejects this. How dare you do this to me? This is you writing your mom a thing of, hey, I don't like you for, you suck because of these 10 things. And then you come back to her and go, I really do love you. Your mom still, yeah, she loves you, but she's not going to be happy. Right. And so the king angrily rejects this, go away, throws it away. And so now we start to see even more and more fighting. The early battles that they're talking about, one of the earliest battles is Bunker Hill. Now, Bunker Hill is going to take place just north of Boston. So if we're looking on this map here, this is Boston at that time. Bunker Hill is just above it, right? So you can see in this map here, this is the north part of the peninsula for where Boston is. That's this little spot right here. This is the Battle of Bunker Hill. It takes place here. And I showed you guys this on Google Earth. But the Battle of Bunker Hill is that early battle that proves the Patriots can take on the British. As the British are trying to run up this hill, they're going to be rejected a couple different times. And now remember, you're seeing it as red because this is a British victory. But it's only a British victory because we run out of ammunition. If we had the supplies, we could have held this. Again, this is in June of 75. So the shot heard around the world is April. May is the second Continental Congress, and now we're June. What we want is we want to put weaponry, we want to put cannons on this hill so we can fire into Boston if we need to. The British don't like this idea and want to push the colonists off of that island. They charge the fortification and are pushed back. They charge again and are pushed back. Finally, on the third attempt, they finally charge and we run out of ammunition, so we have to run from the spot. The British will gain control of this. That's why it's a British victory. But it does prove that if we have the supplies, if the colonists have the supplies, we're going to be okay. At the same time, we're trying to get more supplies from a place called Fort Ticonderoga. Fort Ticonderoga is a couple hundred miles away. It's in upstate New York. There are a lot of cannons, a lot of supplies that we want. Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold are going to go capture that fort. There's not a battle. The British don't even put up a fight for it. They give us the fort. As we get the fort, now we need those cannons back in the Boston area. George Washington sends Henry Knox. Henry Knox is supposed to bring those cannons about 300 miles in the dead of winter through the forest of Massachusetts and New York. This is not an easy task. There's no roads. The cannons need to be put on wheels and everything else. And when there's no roads and it's through the forest, you have to carry it a lot of the way because it's not going to roll when it's, there's down trees and there's snow and everything else. It takes him a while, but eventually Henry Knox is able to get those cannons back to Boston and for George Washington. On the night of March 3rd and the morning of March 4th, George Washington is going to install a artillery battery south of Boston on Dorchester Heights. On the night of March 3rd, there's nothing there. As night falls, Washington will have the Continental Army take all of those